Turks. So, you'll be hearing in the news a lot lately that, hey, the banks have paid back TARP. They had received $250 billion, and they have returned the $250 billion. Mission accomplished. TARP worked, and the banks were good guys. Complete and utter nonsense. First of all, let me begin to tell you how they have paid us back. One of the things reported by the New York Times is that they have used the Small Business Lending Fund to pay us back. Okay, let me explain the absurdity of that. The Small Business Lending Fund is supposed to be for the banks to lend out to small businesses. Makes sense, right? And it's money that comes from the federal government and goes to the banks. You know what the banks have done? They've used that money to pay back the federal government. But that doesn't make any kind of sense. They're paying us back with our money. It's crazy. But the crazy right now is considered perfectly normal. Well, obviously, they pay the money back with the money that we gave them. And by the way, the second collateral damage of that is that the small businesses don't get that money, and they don't get to hire people for local jobs and local businesses. So it's a joke, man. And look, they totally admitted it. Acting Assistant Secretary Timothy Mossad came out and said, oh, yes, absolutely. They took the money we gave them and paid us back with it. Congratulations. Does no one else see the absurdity of that? I can't emphasize how crazy that is. All right, now, when you break down the numbers, by the way, of TARP, don't believe the hype. So they say, well, the banks got $250 billion, and they pay that back. But the reality is they don't tell you about the money that went to the insurers, the borrowers, the auto companies, etc. That was $475 billion of TARP, right? Now, why does that matter? Because they funnel the money through the insurers like AIG to the banks, and that money they have not paid back. You know how much they owe in that money? $187 billion. So as they tell you they paid the money back, no, they just got it from AIG and then gave it to you. They're shuffling money around. But the bottom line is right now, the American taxpayer, at least on TARP alone, is owed $187 billion. So don't believe the hype, okay? But the banks turn around and go, oh, that's not me. The American taxpayer is stuck with AIG and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Me, well, I paid my money back. And the government totally lets them get away with it. The Congressional Budget Office forecasts that eventually, when those insurers, et cetera, pay the money back, that we will have lost at least $19 billion in TARP. If we lost $19 billion only, I'd throw a big party. There's no way we're going to lose. How are they going to pay back $187 billion? AIG, how long is it going to take them to do that? 100 years? The whole thing's a joke on us, man, the taxpayer. But it gets worse. Wait a minute. And you think, wait a minute. How did all the banks that had all these toxic mortgages get that stuff off their books quickly enough to turn a profit to pay some of the money back to us? Well, they did it by unloading $1 trillion worth of toxic mortgages to the Federal Reserve. I can't emphasize it enough, man. What a joke that is. If they got to dump their worst $1 trillion worth of investments onto, eventually it's going to be the taxpayer that pays for that through the Fed. And then they get money for things like giving out small business loans, and they'll repay us with that. And then they get money from AIG, et cetera, and backdoor bailouts, and they don't pay that back. And then they declare mission accomplished. We've been had. We've been took. They are robbing us blind while our government encourages it and applauds it. Geithner is out saying, oh, look at this, TARP, what a success. Oh, fantastic. Throw rose petals at my feet. Some of the money got paid back. Okay, all of this doesn't even take into account the interest rates. The feds have it at less than 1%. So the banks, what they used to get charged almost 3 times as much back in 2007. Now, they get the money for so much less. Now, if you get money at nearly 0% interest rate, you can't help but make money. It's somebody's giving you free money. And they're basically saying, go gamble with it, do whatever you like, you keep the profits, and if things go wrong, it doesn't matter because the taxpayer is going to bail you out. They're already bailing you out. Did you know, for example, that 9 out of every 10 homes in this country, mortgages in this country, home loans are guaranteed by the taxpayers? Well, I mean, look, what the fuck? Okay? Because that means we're on the hook for all of these home loans, for 90% of them. So if something goes wrong, we get busted. You and I pay for Bob and Susie's mistake, let alone the bank's mistakes. Even if everybody was an honest player and everybody was earnest, and they said, hey, you know, Bob and Susie just screwed up that home loan. They come, all right, they go, Cenk, you, JR, and you know, whoever else, you're going to pay for it. Now, that's something that conservatives should hate, but they love it. They love it. They're like, yes, load it on to the taxpayers as long as the banks don't pay. That's because the Republican politicians are totally, utterly bought, 100% bought, and they've been hoodwinked, their conservative followers, by the politicians and by the conservative talk show hosts who are the most loathsome corporate pigs you'll ever see. They're like, yeah, and I'm going to give you a great example of that in a second. So they're like, yeah, just give them, no, of course taxpayers should pay for the banks if they ever make a mistake. Now, do we get to keep the profit? Of course not. The banks keep the whole profit. And then if they crash, then they have us bail them out. They dump their $1 trillion worth of crap on us. And then they pay us back with our money and then brag about it. And then take home record bonuses as we've got 10% unemployment. Well, wow. Now we're down to like 8.9% or whatever. So when you ask people who are actually know what they're doing, by the way, there's so many different sides of this. We're getting screwed in 18 different ways. Let me tell you two more things before I get to the experts. There's another program at the FDIC that guarantees nearly $350 billion in bank debt. Why? Because the banks, they told their politicians, hey, boy, give me another $350 billion. You know how much they owe us on that account? $267 billion. Can you keep track of all this money that they owe us while they pretend they don't owe us anything? They owe us $267 billion on that program, which nobody even talks about. And the other part of it is, look, when the interest rate is low, okay, they print free money, okay? And then we keep the losses, they keep the profits. We've been through that, you get that, right? But there's another hidden problem with that, which is that your savings gets hammered. Because if you're living on your savings, and before you used to get, whatever it was, 3% on your savings, now you get 1% on your savings, well, that's a third of the money you used to get to live on. So it kills the average guy, but who cares? The bankers get rich. That's the only thing that matters. Now, it's not just me saying this or Matt Taibbi saying this or even Simon Johnson saying this. Look, it's the Special Inspector General for TARP, Neil Barofsky. He's leaving now. He's the guy who's supposed to be in charge of TARP. As the administration and Geithner and the Republicans are bragging about it, Republicans don't talk about it, but they love TARP. The Republican politicians, they've never loved the program more in their life. They're like, yeah, give to the banks, give it, give it, give it. You notice they never criticize Geithner? Geithner is one of the worst secretaries we've ever had, one of the worst cabinet officials we've ever had in our history. And the Republicans don't say one word about him. Why? Because they love him. They love how much he gives to the banks. Remember, Geithner originally was a Republican anyway. This whole thing's a shell game. The whole thing's a fraud, okay? So, when they asked about the TARP program, whether it was a success, Neil Barofsky said, among many devastating things, quote, the increased moral hazard and potentially disastrous consequences associated with the continued existence of financial institutions that are too big to fail, okay? I mean, he wrote a whole op-ed saying what a disaster TARP has been. I just gave you one of the simple quotes at the end of a sentence there, okay? Disastrous consequences. Now, this is the 18th layer of this. Even if all this was to work out and they repay back some of the $187 billion and they repay back some of the $267 billion and the interest rates eventually go up, blah, 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 blah. Even if all this were to happen, what Barofsky's saying and what the top economists in the world are saying is, look, you've done this moral hazard, which means you've told the banks you cannot go under. We will definitely bail you out. And that is definitely our current system. Even the head of TARP says it. So go ahead and take all the risk you want. If you crash, we'll come to the rescue. That encourages a crash. It is a wild encouragement to a crash. It's a terrible idea. So Now, final quote is from Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz. He says, quote, TARP and the recovery of troubled assets were not ends in themselves, but means to an end, namely the recovery of the economy. In that ultimate objective, TARP has not only been a dismal failure, 4 years after the bursting of the real estate bubble and 3 years after the onset of the recession, unemployment remains unacceptably high, and our economy is running far below its potential, a waste of resources in the trillions of dollars. But the way the program was managed has, I believe, contributed to the economy's problems. So that is the 19th layer. On top of all the damage I just explained, there's one extra layer, which is, look, since this hasn't helped the economy at all it's done is help the richest banking executives in the world. What's happening is it's sucking all the money out of the rest of the economy. We're not employing as many people. And when you're not employing as many people, that it's a vicious cycle that costs the economy more and more and more money to the tune of trillions of dollars. So it didn't accomplish its objective. Furthermore, it was counterproductive, and then that the economic recession has cost us trillions of dollars. So when you hear from people today that TARP was a success, don't believe the hype. Not even remotely true. Not within continents of true. Total and utter disaster that TARP has been. And right now, the American masses will be lulled into complacency by pretty words from Democrats and Republicans. And it's hard to tell who knows that the FDIC is owed $267 billion. Who remembers that AIG got the backdoor bailouts? Shush, 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 shush. I'll say it. A couple other people say it. Shaheen Nasirpour has a great article about it in the Huffington Post. So they'll be here a little, and there'll be a Fed chairman in St. Louis and one in Dallas that'll say, hey, this is a bad idea. This is leading towards a crash. But everything will be fine until we hit that fucking iceberg straight ahead. And as the ship is sinking, you know what all the politicians will tell you. Say it with me. No one could have seen it coming. As all these top experts in the country are screaming from the woods, we see it coming! It's a disaster! You're telling the banks to take all the risks they can. And they're going to, and they're going to crash the economy. We're already out of money. We already gave them $1 trillion through the Fed, let alone everything else. We don't have any money left. The next time, we're all irrevocably screwed. I don't mean to depress you. I don't mean to give you bad news. But that's the news, and it's my job to give it to you, whether it's good or bad. And on the days when it's good, I am excited, and I love sharing it with you. But today is not one of those days, and don't let people lie to you about that. Young Turks.
It's peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Now there you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Do the peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly with the baseball bat. Do the peanut butter jelly.
Welcome back to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, Cenk Giggers on Polycom. This song is an inside joke here at the studio. We've been singing it for the past 2 days. Peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly, peanut butter jelly. And the reason why we've been singing it is because every time I come in, I say, good morning, guys, it's morning time. And then as soon as I say that, JR's like, peanut butter jelly time. But anyway, that's the whole purpose for the song. That's why we played it. So.
No, I want to explain something to you. That song is nothing but fun.
It is.
And that's what I love about modern music. The words don't have to make sense. Nothing has to make sense. You just put it to a good beat. Could have been saying anything. He could have been saying, it's tuna fish salad time. It's tuna fish salad time. Would have been the same thing. It would have been, it's change your tire time. Change your tire time. And all of a sudden everybody wants to change their tire.
You know what? You're absolutely right. As long as it has a good beat. And another thing that made that song very popular is the fact that it was so random. Like, first of all, there isn't a person on the planet that does not like peanut butter and jelly. If you are living in the United States and you don't like peanut butter and jelly, you're un-American. Okay? I've already stated it. You're done. You're over. But everybody loves peanut butter and jelly.
Unless, of course, you have a peanut allergy, in which case We're very, very sorry. I totally regret what Anna just said.
I'm
Because the
totally,
peanut butter
totally
and jelly
sorry.
sandwich.
Of
Because the
course,
peanut butter and jelly
Cenk.
sandwich would kill you, but you would be un-American as you were dying.
No, those people are exempt. It's okay. It's fine. There are
Oh,
exceptions to every rule.
is she
Am I
not
not
merciful?
merciful? Exactly. By the way, if you guys didn't sense the sarcasm in what I was saying, then calm down. You need to
Okay.
take it down a
No,
little bit.
we know.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
Thanks.
We have a lot of stories to do, and Cenk cut into my hour significantly today. Not a big deal. I'm
No,
not
we're going to
bitter
go
at all.
longer. Just calm down. We're going to go longer, so just calm down.
All right, let's start off with a story that Tom sent me this morning that I love. So yesterday we were talking about luck and how some people are luckier than others. Well, here's a perfect example of a gentleman who is extremely unlucky. It turns out that an information technology worker, he's anonymous and unidentified, we don't know who he is, he decided to opt out of participating in his office lottery pool. Now he does it every single week. All of his coworkers and colleagues get together, they buy the ticket, everything's great. And they always lose, right? Because of course it's extremely rare to win. Well, it turns out that the week where he opted out, his office won. They won the Mega Millions jackpot, $319 million. Poor guy.
Disaster. I mean, this is not the fail of the week. This is the fail of a lifetime.
It really is.
Oh, he's got to be the sickest man in America. By the way, I can smell the lawsuit coming. It don't make any sense. He says he opted out. He knows it. But, he's not going to be able to help himself. His lawyer's going to say, oh, no, but, you had a pattern of participating in that pattern according to the law and blah, 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 blah. But, look, here's what they should do. They should throw the guy a bone.
Yes.
Okay? They say, hey, listen, look, we're not going to give you your fair equal share. You opted out. It's a sad day for you, obviously, right? But everything's going to be all right. Here's whatever it is, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, I don't know, whatever it is. But, you're going to be all right, dog. You're going to be all right.
Right. By the way, one of his colleagues said that they asked him twice whether or not he was sure about opting out or whatever. And he basically answered back saying, yeah, I'm going to pass this time. I'm not feeling lucky. And then afterwards he thought,
I immediately regret this decision.
poor guy.
But ironically, he was right. Mm-hmm. He had no idea what kind of an unlucky decision he was about to make.
Right, that's so true. And you know what, Cenk, going back to what you said about his colleagues throwing him a bone, I agree with you so much. I mean, after taxes and everything, each one of them are going to walk away with $16 million. This is after taxes. That is so much money, right? What I would want to do, personally, if this was my coworker, and especially if I really liked him, I would definitely give him $1 million. Maybe that's too generous, but I think I think it's beyond fair. But it has to be a coworker I like. If it's a coworker I don't like, then I'd give him nothing.
That's terrible. All right, so listen, imagine it's TYT, and JR's like, this is the 1 week I'm not going to participate. And we all have $16 million, and we don't give him nothing. And we walk in, and we walk in on, in fur coats and such. We're like, oh, yes, please, Anna, do pass the Grey Poupon. Oh, JR, you're having trouble buying a sandwich. I guess you should have participated. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that would be so messed up. How bitter would you be, JR? I mean, would you want strike back? Would you find a way to retaliate?
It's impossible to actually, it's just maybe all you can do at that point, you're in a bad position. All you can do at that point is just hope that maybe some minds change, just be extra nice and be like, you know what? I think they'll come around. Maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, or maybe just kind of tiptoe around the point. You guys, my car just keeps breaking down. I just can't afford it, I can't afford it. How do I get to work?
You know what, though? Therein lies the whole problem of winning a lottery. If I won a Mega Millions jackpot, if I won any type of money, right, I would do whatever I could to be low-key about it. Because then all of a sudden, your long-lost cousin comes around. It's like, Anna, I finally found you. I was searching for you for years, and finally we've reconnected. So how about that million? I don't want to deal with that. That's nothing but drams, no interest. So I would be low-key about it.
But it's actually worse than that, because then people come around and they got, well, oh no, but my daughter, she's such a good student. She was about to go to college, but we don't have enough money. And can you just pay her tuition? It's not a big deal. It's just a couple $100,000 of that. Right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, that's a good story. And the thing is, she's not going to get to go to Stanford because I'm a dick, and she's going to go to a community college instead. Whatever. You know, and they're real, right? And everybody wants, and if you don't do it, they're like, what a dick, right? So many of these lottery winners wind up, not immediately, but in the long term, regretting their decision.
Right.
Seriously, I know it seems crazy, but they get bombarded by that stuff, and a lot of them wind up becoming depressed. A lot of them wind up losing the whole money. So, JR, don't worry. You're better off with a broken down car.
Look, the more money you come across, the more problems you see. More money, more problems. We know that. This is not new.
Saw that. Everybody saw that from like a mile away, and I'm like, here it comes. More money, more problems. Anyway, by the way, my guess is that I'm not as generous as Anna. Like, because and my guess is Anna is not as generous as she thinks.
Oh,
she is.
please calm down.
Really, you're gonna give $1 million out of the 16 million?
Yes. You know why? You know why? Because I'm an American. Because I believe in helping others. No. I'm not kidding. Why do I need $16 million? If you're smart with your money, if you know how to invest your money properly, you're fine with $15 million. I don't need $16 million. If one of my coworkers opted out of this lottery and he got nothing, of course, if I liked him, okay, I would definitely help him out. And $1 million, I think at that point is chump change. If you won $16 million, $1 million is nothing. Really, $1 million, an extra million is going to make your life different? It's going to make it better? Come on.
All right. You know how funny, last thing on this, I know we've gone on too long on it, but how funny would it be, like, so again, in this scenario, we all get $60 million, Anna gives JR $1 million because he didn't participate, and I give him $10,000.
That would be really funny. And I love how JR is like the default loser.
Yeah, what's that? I'm the idiot. That's the thing. Even with, like Anna was saying to me, and I completely agree. I was thinking around that number. Once I heard it, I was thinking maybe there's so many people in the office pool that they're all getting around a couple million.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're getting 16, I wouldn't necessarily tell anyone else what to do or suggest it, but I'd kind of be like, do you guys think we should kind of help them out?
Yeah.
Just kind of say it, and I'm not saying I don't think you guys should, but I'm just saying it crossed my mind. So I think if you guys want to do it, let's all do it at the same time. Each of us, maybe if there's enough of us, give him $500,000 each, and he's gonna end up with probably like $5 million or something. I don't know how many are there, and he's gonna end up with a few million. Because then it'll be even less on each of us. Now we're not even giving $1 million; we're giving 6 figures now.
Right.
I don't know.
You know what? You know what this guy is? Now that's a real lib. You know why? He wants to redistribute the wealth. Okay? He doesn't want to just give his money. No. He wants to take all of your money and give it to the loser who, hey, look, the free market said he didn't buy the tickets. Sad day for him. And on our way to our mansions, we should give him a good kick on the way.
Yeah.
That'd be the nice conservative thing to do.
You're right. That would be the conservative thing to do. All right. This next story will probably enrage you. Okay. A man by the name of John Thompson spent 14 years on death row for a crime he did not commit. Seems like we're doing more and more of these stories on a daily basis. Well, it turns out that he was wrongfully convicted of murdering a hotel executive. And the reason why he was wrongfully convicted is because the prosecutors hid DNA evidence and witness testimony that would have proven his innocence. Okay, so what he did is he sued the prosecutors, and according to what the jury ruled, he was supposed to be awarded $14 million, which I think is fair. $1 million for every year he spent in prison when he was not supposed to be there. He came so close to death row. In fact, he was supposed to be executed in a few weeks, and then they proved his innocence. Okay, so he sued, and the jury decided, yes, we are going to award him the $14 million. Well, this case went to the Supreme Court, and what did the Supreme Court rule? Nah, he couldn't prove that there was deliberate indifference. So sorry, no $14 million for you.
Okay. Here, now let me tell you the details of the case so you can make your own judgment on whether there's deliberate indifference. There was 4 different prosecutors that had the blood that did not match his blood, okay? 4 of them. And they're like, yeah. Well, let's not give that to the defense. That would prove he's innocent. And then, that's not all. They had an eyewitness testimony saying that the guy who actually did the crime was 6 feet tall and had very close-cut hair. At the time, he had the guy in this case had an afro, a significant afro, and was 5'8". Look, without the blood, you can say, hey, you know what? Maybe there was a little bit of a mistake, but it doesn't matter. First of all, the prosecution has to share that evidence with the defense either way. The prosecution's job is not to just get a conviction. It's to serve the truth. It's to serve justice. By law, he must share that with the defense. He chose not to share it, but with the blood, it is inarguable. They knew he wasn't the right guy, but they hid it anyway. And what do the conservative justices on the Supreme Court, led by Clarence Thomas, say? I don't know. I mean, is that really a pattern? Could they really show a pattern from the prosecutors? I'm not sure. A jury said it, but I don't believe it. And by the way, to show a pattern, they also introduced cases from the same city where with similar results. The prosecutors doing the same thing. Clarence Thomas was like, I don't know. No, not buying it. The guy gets nothing.
This case, it just shows you blatant corruption in the justice system. And I love how the Supreme Court, the conservatives in the Supreme Court, are supporting it. You know, if I were in the Supreme Court, I would do everything possible to make sure these prosecutors lose their jobs. Hiding this evidence, there is absolutely no excuse for it. I know that there were absolutely no mistakes made. This was done on purpose. As you mentioned, there were 4 prosecutors. It was not one prosecutor. It wasn't like this, blood test was, like the results were sketchy. Just to give you an example, so it turns out that the murderer had a type B blood, right? Had type B blood. Thompson had type O. So, the results of the test weren't sketchy at all. It was just clear evidence that the prosecutors purposely hid. They should not be prosecutors. Anyway, JR, did you want to say something?
Not only should they not be prosecutors, I mean, this goes to a different level. Like you said, it's a part of the law that they have to, especially when they have this kind of evidence, to the contrary to what they're trying to prove. I mean, at this point, they sent this guy very purposely to death. They should be in prison for 15 years.
Yeah. Forget
losing their jobs. You lose your jobs and you go to prison. I'm not putting you on death row, but you almost killed a man. No, you're going to prison, man. That's attempted murder. It's in my mind, that's the same thing. You're going to prison, dude. You 20 years. You're done. I hate that.
Yeah, no, and I've never been more against death row or the death penalty. Can you imagine? He came within weeks of being executed for a crime he did not commit. I mean, how many other cases are there that are similar to this?
Right, and instead of going in that direction, the 5 conservatives on the Supreme Court said no, he should get nothing.
It makes me sick to my stomach. It's such a disgusting story. You guys should know what's going on in the justice system. Prosecutors are getting away with murder, literally. Okay? All right, well, we got to take a break. So let's take a break. When we come back, John Zogby explains what the American dream is. Really inspiring story, in my opinion. So we'll be back with that and more.